Alright, so Ellen Azevedo is in her third year of the MFA program at SF State. She writes about things like monsters, death, and cults centered around popular 80s films starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. She is currently working on her first novel. Thank you, Ellen.
Okay, I'll actually be reading like an excerpt from the novel with the cults centered around Arnold Schwarzenegger, which is centered around Terminator, obviously.
Sarah Connor Booth.
Anyway, so the scene that I'm reading, because it is from a novel, I have to give you like a little bit of background information, otherwise it won't make any sense. So the main character in it, Mal, is, okay, well, so it's sci-fi. Let's just start there. It's sci-fi. The main character, Mal, is a medico engineer, so he builds or grows some synthetic or mechanical organs to transplant into people for need and also for cosmetic reasons. So one of the terms is synth skin, which is synthetic skin. It's badly tested and being marketed heavily, and so people are dying from it, including his first 7 patients, which he killed all of them, and so then he got suspended. And now this is his first day back to work. He's obsessed with 90s pop culture, or, well, not just 90s, like our pop culture now. And the other term you need is noids, which are humanoid android kind of robot people that do all of the jobs that underpaid people do now. Okay. Oh, yeah, I'm really short. This happens every time I stand up here. I'm sorry. I'm only like 3 feet tall. Yes, I'm an Oompa Loompa. Okay. Okay. So this is from Mal and the Mechanical Dream Girl. It was odd to be back in the locker room of the hospital. He had been away for so long, it seemed like things should have changed. But as he pulled on his scrubs, he couldn't help but feel as though he'd never left. The locker room looked the same, down to the smudges on the locker doors. The same dings and nicks decorated the scuffed old benches. The tile floors were as ugly as they'd always been, and the dingiest shade of white Mal had ever seen. The strange amalgamated smell of sterilized chemicals and foot odor still lingered in the air. The bulletin board on the wall opposite the lockers still hung just slightly askew, making Mal feel the same wave of violent frustration that he used to feel every time he entered the room. Once he tried to fix it, and the whole thing had come crashing down, sending ancient flyers in every direction. Mal could never understand why the damn thing was there in the first place. It was a boring and unsightly relic of the past. He'd left it lying on the floor when it came crashing down, hoping somebody else would find it and decide to finally check it out. But to his agonizing amazement, the board was back in place the next day, the flyers pinned in the exact same place as they had been previously. That was the beginning of Mal's hatred for the hospital's janitor-noid who had OCD. But it wasn't just the locker room that seemed untouched. Mal felt as though people were equally unchanged by the time lapse. There was a few new faces, sure, and a few faces that had disappeared, yet for the most part he recognized everyone. They came in, said hello and welcome back, phones clearly not in vision mode, and then fell right back into the rituals and routines Mal had watched them enact every day for years. It was as though he had returned to a play he'd once performed in, and the choreography hadn't changed. Everybody arrived at the same times they always had. The late people were still late. The early birds were still annoyingly smug about their punctuality, taking the time to sit and leisurely sip a cup of coffee as the late people frantically tried not to put their scrub tops on inside out. Everyone still laced their shoes in the same way. The folks who wore extra strength deodorant still tried to apply it discreetly. They still failed to do so. Everyone still shut their locker and took a step back as the janitor-noid with OCD counted the lockers at 1/4 the hour like they were doing the world's most mundane wave, then returned to what they were doing as though nothing had happened. Mal wasn't sure if the monotony of all this bothered him or comforted him. In some ways he felt good to be back in the routine. It gave him faith that he could redeem himself and rise to the top because he belonged in the routine. He was a fundamental part of it. He contemplated this as he emerged from the locker room and headed toward the chief resident's broom closet of an office. He turned right and ambled down the brightly lit hall, passing the rooms of patients who were propped up and suspended in weird ways, like some sort of modern art exhibit on capitalism and circuses. The orthopedics wing always threw Mal off, so he usually switched back out of vision mode as he passed through. But today he decided to leave his phone chip off. He was nervous, and the last thing he needed was to trip over some rogue patient's broken leg and break his own leg. He did, however, try to avoid looking at the patient rooms. Instead, he focused on the moving photos on the walls. They were large, cheaply framed, and completely eye-roll worthy. Each one depicted a distinctly healthy-looking person with a caption underneath that said something like, "My new synth skin is synthly amazing." The understatedly beautiful subject, who, for whatever reason, was always dressed in pale blue, would slowly break into a smile over and over again, or bring their hand up to give a thumbs up in a never-ending loop just long enough that it was meant to extend through the length of time that a patient would spend walking past it. But Mal could see the things coming from several yards away, so he watched the creepy photos like he was trapped in some sort of Sisyphean deja vu nightmare. Eventually, he reached the chief resident's office, took a deep breath, and knocked. "Come in," a voice called brightly. Mal stepped into the tiny office and looked down at the even tinier woman occupying it. He was surprised at how beautiful she was. Usually medico-engineers looked exhausted at best, but she looked immaculate. Her impossibly shiny black hair was pin-curled at her temples in accordance with the bizarre 1920s throwback that had recently swept the fashion world. Her eyelids sparkled with a smoky-colored glitter, and Mal wondered if her flawless onyx skin could possibly be real. "Hey Mal, welcome back." Mal blinked. She knew him? She laughed. "You probably don't remember me. It's okay. Our paths didn't cross too many times before you left." Mal felt he would have remembered a face like hers, but he kept the thought to himself. "Well, anyway, welcome back. It's a new year, so let's put all that happened behind us and move forward. I know it must be strange to go from being an attending to essentially being a resident again, but obviously we know you're not a resident. You're still an attending. You're just going to be playing the part of a resident for a bit while you get back into the groove of things. Sound good?" She didn't pause for an answer. "All right, so you'll be working with Dr. Dodson from now on. You can usually catch him in the lounge around this time, and remember, you can come to me with anything. I'm here to help you get back on your feet." With that, she stood, walked the step and a half to the door, and gave Mal a beaming white smile. He hated her. Mal found Dr. Merle Dodson in the lounge exactly where the chief resident, whose name was Dr. Lila Lafort, as Mal learned from the ugly little nameplate on the left side of her door, had said he would be. Dr. Dodson had to be close to 1,000 years old. His translucent blue-white skin was the antithesis of synth skin, and the tufts of snowy hair poking out of his ears were so thick and fluffy that they looked like whimsical little creatures. He was drinking a cup of coffee and holding an actual newspaper. Where would he even have found such a thing? And looking thoroughly unsure of where he was or how he got there in the first place. Mal approached cautiously, fearing that he might unintentionally startle the old man and up his death toll before even returning to the OR. "Excuse me, Dr. Dodson?" "Call me Dot!" Dr. Dodson shouted deafly. Mal practically had a heart attack himself. Of all the medico-engineers they could have assigned him to work with, why on earth would they choose the one who could possibly be the world's very first medico-engineer? Were they trying to get Mal to kill another patient? Right. Dot. "Hi. I'm Dr. Rodnap. I'll be... I'm Dr. Rodnap," Mal shouted, exaggerating each syllable. "I'm going to be..." The old man started to doze off. "God damn it. Dot, over here. Hi, I'm Dr. Rodnap. I'll be working with you." "Oh, all right then. Let's go give someone a new kidney." "Come on, boy, we don't have all day." He swayed dangerously to his feet. "What's your name then?" Mal was sure Dot would die on the way to the OR. He wasn't altogether sure that the man hadn't died already. The line between alive and dead had never seemed less defined to Mal. He walked close to Dot, confident that at any moment the old doctor could collapse into a pile of dust. But once he was on his feet, Dot turned out to be quite spry for his many, many years. He moved quickly and gracefully down the hall, responding to turns and gurneys so reflexively that Mal began to wonder how long Dot had been working at this hospital in particular. He was like an ancient Jedi master, anticipating obstacles a second before Mal saw them, his white coat billowing behind him wisely. And he was equally dexterous in the OR. Mal was surprised and impressed to see how quickly and precisely the old man could suture. His hands as steady and sure as OCD janitor Noid's 4:15 a.m. scalpel stacking and unstacking ritual. He narrated every nuance of the procedure to Mal as he worked, wheezing out the secrets of his flawless technique. Mal actually found himself half listening to the elderly doctor, and even felt he might have learned a trick or two by the time the mechanical kidney was filtering away toxins safe and sound inside its new, fairly tubby body. After the surgery, Dot took a nap, and Mal got into an argument with a vending bot over the nutritional value of his desired snack food. Mal watched Dot snore in a chair as he ate his hard-earned bugles. He wondered why Dot was not holding down a higher rank in the hospital. He was certainly the oldest medico-engineer in the place, and from what Mal had seen, he was unquestionably skilled. Mal couldn't imagine why Dot wasn't the chief of medico-engineering. He sucked a bugle off his finger and crunched it loudly, not disturbing the old man in the slightest. Perhaps he'd just been passed over when he was a bit younger, and now they simply felt he was too old. Or perhaps he built garbage mechanical organs that were only compatible with his patients half the time. The kidney today had been pristine, but maybe that was unusual for Dr. Dot. Mal narrowed his eyes at his sleeping companion and chewed another bugle. Their next replacement was a mechanical lung rep, and Dot told Mal he could take the lead this time. He was nervous as he scrubbed his hands, dropping the soap twice and nearly knocking a nurse over when he turned around too quickly and banged into her. Beneath his scrubs, his knees were shaking and sweating. He knew he had no reason to be afraid. Mechanical lungs were solid organs that had been well tested before making their way into hospitals. Mal reminded himself that he was a talented medico-engineer whose bright future had been marred by chance, nothing more. This was his time to show that he was not to blame for the deaths of those 7 patients. With Dot at his heels, he entered the OR and set to work.